Okay, so I would like to take this time to welcome everyone to the P3 Professional Pop-Up Virtual Career Conversation. I am your facilitator, Donella Michelle Large, and I would like to take the time, students, to just remind you that you will be on mute as well as your video. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please enter that within the chat. And now I am so thrilled to introduce to everyone our panelists. We have Anthony Tuttle. He is one of the directors for WMCAT, and he works to increase awareness, build excitement around, and provide equitable access to cybersecurity training and other technology resources within our community. And we also have Angela Hill. Angela leads Jadex Strategic Group, which is a technology company that is focused on helping organizations with cloud service, information security, and assurance of intelligence support. And so at this time, I just want Anthony to kind of tell us more about who he is and what he does, and then we'll pass it on to Angela.
Yeah. So thanks everybody for joining in. Without taking all the time, just a little bit about myself. As Michelle mentioned, I'm the program manager for the Cyber Hub at WMCAT. WMCAT is the West Michigan Center for Arts and Technology. So we're a nonprofit here on the west side of Grand Rapids. And my day-to-day job is really focusing at how to help anybody interested in getting into the information security or cybersecurity career field figure out how to do that. There's a number of ways. It's a huge career field that has a crazy shortage of talent. There's not enough people to do all the jobs that are out there today, and they're also really well-paying jobs. And so trying to figure out how to help people identify a passion and then connect them with the resources to prepare for those careers. And so I wear a lot of hats within that. I do some conversations like these. I do a little bit of training. I do some sort of administrative office type work as an office worker. But my background is that I went to North Carolina State University and got a teaching degree. And then I got a scholarship to go to Wake Forest University Schools of Business. So I got a master's in management. I worked at Steelcase, so it's a local furniture manufacturer here, for a little over 6 years, working with and managing some technology products. And now I'm at WMCAT. So I've got a pretty wide variety of personal experience and professional experience. And if you had asked me, when I was 10, 15 years old, what I would be doing, I would have told you I'd be a mechanical engineer designing roller coasters. So a lot's happened since I had that initial conception, and I'm more than happy to dig a little deeper on any of those things that you all might have questions on. And without taking any more of my initial time, I'll go ahead and pass it off to Angela.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you for having me as well. My name is Angela Hill. I'm the CEO and leader of Jadex Strategic Group. So we're a technology company that focuses on cloud security, digital transformation and training. And we have a team of experts that have over 50 years of supporting the federal government in cybersecurity with intelligence and cybersecurity needs. So we help businesses actually build virtual environments that are secure and collaborative. My background is extremely diverse, very much like Anthony. If you had talked to somebody from when I went to high school, they would probably not believe me when I told them that I'm, working in technology or cybersecurity, because I actually, after college, ended up joining the military. And in my military career, I ended up working for the federal government in the intelligence industry after 9/11. So so it's a very different background. So I have over a decade of experience supporting national security. I worked counterterrorism for the last 7 years of my career in the government. And I supported the Central Intelligence Agency. So I worked for the CIA as somebody that would look for assets and hunt terrorists. So I kind of was grandfathered into the cybersecurity realm because what I did was called human intelligence, and that kind of plays within the social engineering space of cybersecurity. And so that's how I actually was introduced to cybersecurity, because cyber was popping up when I was in college and was starting to be a really new industry when I was in the military and the government. And so here I am today, now running my own business.
Wow, that is fantastic. Oh my gosh. And you know what's awesome is the fact that you guys, your path was just so, there were many steps that you took along the way. You just didn't have an idea of what you wanted to do, that you took advantages of the many opportunities that were presented to you. So that's amazing. What are some of the skills and education that's required to work in the field of cybersecurity? And I'll go with you, Anthony.
I'll start there. I'll start with that one. I think one of the most important skills, and you'll hear a lot of information security or cybersecurity professionals, we sort of use those expressions interchangeably. There's definitely a technical component. If you think hacker when you hear cybersecurity and all the sort of stereotypes that come along with that, which we'll get to in a second. That's a part of it, the technical skill, the hands on your keyboard. But ultimately, and this isn't specific to cybersecurity, communication is just a huge core skill set, right? Whether it's writing an email or making sure that you're sharing the appropriate, and it's raining outside, so I apologize if you hear some background noise, but if you find a vulnerability, or if there's a risk, making sure that you're able to communicate that to people that own the business or are responsible for money, or whoever the owners might be. Communication is a huge piece and part of this sector, because cybersecurity, it doesn't necessarily make money for companies. It helps protect them, right? And they have to understand what the risks are. So I would strongly lean on communication as being a really important skill set. But if you are looking at the technical side of things, there's networking, there's coding and scripting, there's system administration, policies and procedures and things like that. Each of which are their own careers in their own right. So there's a huge wealth of knowledge, but ultimately it's having the technical excellence in whatever particular part you're in, and then being able to communicate well with coworkers and with business owners to make sure everyone understands the risks at hand.
Yeah. And I would actually say that I like to bring it back to like STEM and STEAM, like the acronym, because when I was in high school and elementary, there was no STEM or STEAM activities. Like, I was growing up in the early 90s, and I graduated in 98, so I'm a little bit older, and cyber really wasn't a thing. Like, the internet was really new. And so if I actually was going to school when I was in high school for art. So I was going to be an art major. All my classes my senior year were studio classes. I ended up going into college and pursuing a Spanish degree because I'm bilingual, or I'm biracial, and I wanted to, learn more about Spanish and my culture, and I couldn't afford art school, but I was always artistic. And so when I ended up graduating college, I'm just like, didn't really want to be an Spanish teacher, but I still wanted to be artistic. And I ended up joining the Navy because my dad was in the Navy, and he was like, well, you should go into intelligence. And within the intelligence industry, I found imagery analysis and geospatial mapping, which is extremely technical, and but it's a little bit artistic because you're creating graphics. So I would encourage the students that are interested in math and science and engineering and even the arts to explore technology or cyber related skills, because you still have the opportunity to design infrastructure and networks and environments which can allow you to use your creativity.
That's fantastic. So why do you think it's so important for our students of color, especially, to explore careers that are within the IT or cybersecurity field? Why do you think that's so important? And I'll start with Angela.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it's just we're underrepresented. Especially as women. There's so many rooms that I've been in, and I'm the only woman in the room, or minority at that. So it, depending on the demographics or where you live. I lived in DC for 10 years while I was in the counterterrorism industry. So I didn't feel it so much there, but when I come back to different pockets of the United States, you definitely do feel underrepresented. So I think, although it might be something that's not encouraged in the home, because I know in the Latino community, technology, it's just not something that is really present in a lot of the Latino homes. It still is an industry, I think, that is fruitful and is challenging. And I would really encourage them to explore, because it can bring you so many different opportunities and different places to live and experience different things. So.
Wow, great. What about you, Anthony?
Yeah. So to piggyback on what Angela was saying, I will actually, I have a bar graph that's a bit of a downer. But it helps, I hope, re-illustrate the discrepancy of the workforce within cybersecurity, right? According to some information from ISD Squared back in 2017, and so the numbers might have changed a little bit, but the industry, the technical professionals that are inside information security and cybersecurity are over 70% white and over 80% male, right? But that is at the same time that we're looking at a workforce shortage of 500,000 current cybersecurity positions. And so if I can go backwards here really quick, just to highlight that, and this is some more recent information from cyberseek.org. They update, I think, at the end of the calendar year. So this is, maybe 6 or 8 months old, or a little bit more. But in Michigan, they're estimating about 8,600 unfilled cybersecurity jobs today. So as we talk about representation and why it matters, just having a seat at the table, knowing that these are high earning jobs, right? It's a high earning career field. One, because there's a lot of knowledge that you need in order to be successful, but at the same time, because there's such a technical talent shortage, they're paying a premium, right? And so we can help, improve the socioeconomic standing of our families, of our communities, with these living wage careers that come with benefits, and all of the other sort of bells and whistles, if you will, of high earning jobs. But at the same time, if we sort of go back to this graphic that shows, how little representation we have on a whole, the more that we're able to be in information security and cybersecurity, the more we're able to speak to the needs of our individual communities, right? If you think about, whether it's coding or network admin or system admin sorts of roles, the more that we're in the rooms that are designing the solutions to serve our communities, the more we can bring our knowledge about, who we are. It's not, there was an expression from a meeting I was on a couple weeks ago. So pardon me if I butcher it, but it's not white men solving white men problems, right? It becomes the population solving problems for the population. And if we're not designing the solutions or helping secure the systems that impact our communities, then there are some outsized, potentially negative ramifications for us. And I'll sort of step off my soapbox briefly. I think maybe a couple of questions were coming in through the chat. So I want to.
Yes, and Anthony, thank you. And Angela, again, that information is so rich and it's so needed. And so we do have a question on the table. It states, and this question is for Angela, when did you know it was time to become a business owner and leave the comfort of a stable income / benefits?
Yeah, so I mentioned in the chat, but I'm going to just tell the story. So I ended up leaving the government, and you might imagine that it was very difficult for me to transition back to civilian life. It was really hard to translate that, hey, I worked in counterterrorism and looked for bad guys, and how do I translate those skills? So I was able to look at my skills at the time, and all intelligence professionals are considered analysts. at the end of the day. So I ended up working for an organization and sold my skills as a data analyst. And that's actually where I developed a passion around building infrastructure and technology using Microsoft environments. And then from there, my organization ended up eliminating my department a couple years later. And so the business is a family-owned business. We are veteran-owned, minority-owned, and woman-owned. So we decided to bring together these intelligence and cybersecurity professionals. And when I was laid off, I was just like, I'm just going to go live at this. And so we actually went live right before COVID. And we are dealing with several clients now in different industries, anywhere from nonprofit to transportation to logistics. And so it's been a really exciting time. It's definitely uncertain and can be scary, but I think if you're not doing something you love, then it's not worth doing. And that would be one thing I could advise any younger person or my younger self, is just to really follow your dreams. And for me, helping others and helping businesses be more secure or more collaborative is really one of my passions. So that's how I started.
I love that. And Anthony, what about you? What are some of the things that you love or you're most passionate about as it relates to the field of work that you do?
Yeah. So this is kind of, I guess, nerdy. We'll call it nerdy. It's okay to be nerdy. So when I was in middle school and high school, I was good relative to my peers, my students at math. And so it sort of lent itself towards, oh, I'm going to be an engineer. I'll take all the physics classes and the math classes and, the hardcore college prep pathway. My sister wasn't so good at math, and one of her friends, her close friends, she's a couple years younger than me, was actually kind of bad at math. And so I started tutoring her just on like some of the basic things, like maybe on like Sunday afternoons or whatever. It was stuff that I had already passed, right? But I liked it, and I didn't really think anything of it. I still went to school. I started out, like I said, trying to be a mechanical engineer. Side note, mechanical engineers don't necessarily design the roller coasters. If you have that passion and you're looking to do the same, they make sure that, the roller coaster doesn't overheat and that it can bear all the loads of everyone sitting on it. So I went from mechanical engineering to industrial engineering, which is not very similar, thinking that I could go to industrial design because I like to design things. Those two things, industrial engineering and design, are not similar either. And then ultimately landed in the College of Education, which, if we go back to the tutoring metaphor, is kind of where I had some natural passions and inclinations. I was specifically to Angela's point, wanting to be artistic, but maybe being a little bit more technically minded. I have a minor in graphic communications as well, and I taught as a student teacher scientific and technical visualization, which is why I'm sharing my screen. I'm a visual learner. I'm a visual thinker. In this particular job sector, there's so much information. It's so convoluted. It's so hard to think through what all the variations and ways to get into the field are. And so helping to educate and help clarify is really, for me, where I get to scratch that itch to be a teacher and to disseminate knowledge. And that sort of sits at the core nucleus of who I am and what I do. That's what I did when I was at Steelcase. I put together curriculum and helped educate people around our products and why what I was selling at the time was so great. Why I feel really passionate about, everything that I do. And there's definitely a lens through wanting to share information and share cool graphics and sort of what I see inside my mind's eye, getting it in front of other people that is core to who I am and what I do.
I love that. I love that. So one question I want to pose to the two of you is, considering the fact that, and Anthony, thank you so much for just sharing that data. Considering the fact that this field is a white-dominated field, what advice would you give some of our students of color as they, one, explore careers, two, once they land that dream job, what are some tools or what are some tips you would give a student so they can maintain their culture, maintain their richness, maintain who they are, so that they can be authentic within themselves, but yet still do the job that they love? What tips could you provide to some of our young people as they navigate this whole thing called life and careers and just maintaining their true sense of self?
Mhm. I guess I can start with that as tips in regards to the career path. I would say to consider the military as an option, just because I think right now, a lot of organizations are pushing the educational career path, but the military has a multitude of different roles and responsibilities that, there's cyber roles within all branches, and then equally in the government as well. So that's a career path where their education can be paid for. And then they're also huge, very diverse organizations. So that's how I think I didn't lose my sense of self when I was in the military, because it's such a diverse group of people, that I could find, my Latinos or the other communities of color very easily. I was deployed in Africa, for instance, and we were doing salsa nights on Wednesday nights in Africa. So salsa, it was kind of in every country that I ever visited. So, that actually helped me really stay close to my community as well. And then in college, some of the things that would help me stay grounded is I did get involved heavily in diverse groups, Latino organizations, a Latina-based sorority. And so that helped me really identify with my culture and to kind of explore my being biracial. And then as I've grown older, I'm really just now starting to enter some groups here locally, because I moved back to Michigan from DC about almost 4 years ago. But there's several different groups here locally that I'd like to get involved with. There's a Latina network that I'd like to get involved with. And there's a women, I think we were talking about it earlier, Women of Color Give. So for me, helping younger women in STEM and STEAM activities, or teach them about STEM and STEAM at a young age, is really important and helps me stay connected.
All right, and you, Anthony?
My turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, so similar to Angela, I'm multiracial, Black, white, and Puerto Rican. So I will admit that there is no small amount of code switching depending on, which organization or group or sort of party even I go to. But I think acknowledging that, one, as we're thinking about, hey, exploring your desires or your just curiosities around information security, right? Like, never be ashamed about what your interests are. And then also, always have a mindset of continuing to learn. Long gone are the careers where, and I think they should be, so maybe a little bit of editorialized comments, where like you pick one job with one employer and that's where you're at for your career. Right. Industries are changing, organizations are changing, your skill sets are going to change. To mine and Angela's credit, right? Like, what we went to school for is not what we're doing today, because the employment landscape is continually going to change. And one, just to help you stay on top of all of those changes, have a learning mindset, but you never know what new passions you might uncover or areas of interest that you might stumble across. So just being hungry and thirsty for knowledge, keeping an open mind, staying true to who you are, and also recognizing that, it's an uphill battle, right? Like, if having more Black and brown people, men and women, in cybersecurity, information security was easy, we would have done it already, right? Like, there are some systemic issues, internal organization cultures, pipeline development, recruitment processes. These are some systemic issues that you can't necessarily change on your own. organizations, like WMCAT are trying to help identify what those are and figure out how to break down some of those barriers. My job is specifically focusing on how to grow, to fill the gap and diversify the talent pipeline for cybersecurity so that we can get to all those things that I was talking about earlier. But recognize that the system isn't necessarily designed to make it easy for you. There's actually this idea that like you kind of have to know how to hack the system in terms of recruitment in order to hack the systems in terms of you getting paid to do the work. And right or wrong or just or fair or easy or not aside, being hungry for knowledge, being true to who you are, continuing to learn despite sort of what challenges are in the way, and keeping an open mind so that you can follow those passions as they change throughout your life, because you're a human being and you'll continue to develop and grow and change, are all things that I hope you sort of keep core to who you are as you look at how to get paid for your time as a professional.
Yeah.
I love it. So I think now is a great opportunity. Just tell our students, what is a day in the life of, what is your day every day? What's a typical day? What does that look like for you each, And I'll start with.
I'll like to rephrase the question a little bit and say, what does maybe like a week or a month in the life look like? For me personally, in my current role, right, like each day looks very different.
Right.
Right. And I think most people's days look different, although there are some patterns and some routines that we fall into, right? Like there's a lot of email communication, setting up and coordinating meetings, but I think that that's going to be true of most people's jobs and professions. Part of it is having conversations like these, whether it's over coffee in a coffee shop, like how I met Angela almost 2 years ago, and in the before times, or in front of like a training room, for instance, right, where we could come together and I could sort of teach you what I know, or share these awesome graphics that I put together. I also do a fair amount of reporting, so documenting the work that we do as a nonprofit. Documentation is an important role, and we have some people who've given us money, and there are obligations behind that in terms of reporting. But also just learning and reading is a large part of what I do, right? To try to figure out a way to thread the needle or shoot the gap, or whatever sort of euphemism or expression might be there. That there's some administrative work, there's some learning, and some sharing of information. And then also just in my role in particular, just trying to connect with people. Hopefully I come across as a fairly approachable type of guy, and it's not terrible to listen to me. And so a large part of my job is to connect with organizations around the community, understand what their needs are, figure out how to serve them in service of, like I said, growing and diversifying the local talent pipeline.
And you, Angela?
So mine is really diverse in the sense that, like, I'm not a cybersecurity professional, but I'm managing a cybersecurity team. So those are also roles that you can do as well. You don't have to actually be the technical person. You could be managing the environment or the people. And if you really like helping people and serving others, that's something that you could consider as management. Or even I've been told recently that sales is like you're looking to help a client with a new solution or helping provide a secure environment. So I like that perspective of sales versus the old thought around sales. But today I'm doing anything from administrative, product management. I'm building our products. I'm doing the work with our clients. I'm managing the teams, and I'm the project manager for a lot of our projects because we're a very small organization right now. And so I'm kind of have a lot of different hats at this moment as the owner of the organization. And I'm also here representing women in technology and security. So I try to do events like this as much as possible. And one of the things that is really profound about Jadex is that we really believe in living in a world of abundance and giving back. So if I can help anybody in my community be educated or teach them about technology and security and give back to nonprofits, that's something that we're also doing as well. So.
Yeah, and I know that Angela and I are less technical than some of our counterparts. For anybody who's interested in that side of the house, get ready. I've got another cool graphic coming up for you. I did want to at least acknowledge. I talked about system administration or networking and network administration or coding and scripting. If you're interested in the technical side of information security or cybersecurity, each one of sort of these buckets, they'll have their sort of own daily routine and rhythm, right? Looking at network traffic and auditing logs, or working with a lot of the tools or operating systems, or coding, creating scripts to be able to automate processes. Those aren't things that I'm personally necessarily involved with. I know that they exist and they're part of information security broadly, but then also thinking about sort of if you're not technical, but you're still really interested in the career field, we talked about, being a good communicator, understanding and being able to speak the language. Maybe you really like policy. Some people do. And you want to understand, right, like the GDPR legislation that Europe passed a year or two ago and how that impacts global policy compliance or global risk or incident management or incident response. To make a Parks and Rec reference, there's one episode where there's like this huge, they're going through like a mock, I guess, trial. That's not right. They're pretending that there's like a huge crisis that they need to solve. And so, how do you respond to crises, and, practicing for if something were to really happen. There's a whole part of that within cybersecurity as well, right? Or information security, called incident management and incident response. There's auditing, if you really like numbers and Excel spreadsheets, right? There's a huge array of things that you can get into within the umbrella of cybersecurity. So, if you're listening to Angela and I talk about not really being interested in the administrative part, there's plenty of other stuff to get involved with as well. So I want to make sure that we acknowledge that also.
Yeah, that's the compliance side of the house that we would say. So like one of the things I was really passionate about when I got out of the intelligence sector is I realized that small businesses weren't protecting their assets. And they weren't really using a lot of controls to protect their environment. So there is that side of the house where there are officers that will go through and they're just implementing different controls, whether it's providing security awareness training, whether it's, like he said, incident management, or just making sure that there are certain things turned on in the environment to procure and secure your environment. So definitely don't have to be the pen tester, although that's probably the sexier of all the jobs, right? So
I love it. So we have about 4 minutes remaining. And here's the thing. This is the first one. We had to work out the kinks. There will be plenty of other P3. So I'm really excited, and I'm glad that the first P3 could host you too. I mean, this conversation is so rich and it's so needed. And so I just wanted to know if you two could provide. Oh, okay. I have a question. So we have a question here. I'm curious about a lesson learned or mistakes you've learned along the way.
I have a generic one that came to mind really quickly, especially in anything computer or IT related, right? Things can happen so quickly. We know that, in a decade, the iPhone went from like Gen 1 to whatever they're at now. Like, technology generally moves very, very quickly. Within the IT and cybersecurity world, you're ingesting and digesting a lot of information really quickly. And so, being proactive and trying to stay on top of the news and the alerts, what those vulnerabilities are, or you might hear them called zero-day vulnerabilities or zero-day exploits, not sitting on it and taking the initiative to keep moving your job forward and your role forward is something that, you know, if you're like, oh, I'll read that article later or next week, you can very quickly find that you've got, you know, a veritable book worth of articles you're trying to read and catch up on. And I may or may not have a bunch of those in some tabs on my computer right now. So just, you know, like I said, being hungry and thirsty for knowledge and really trying to stay on top of all of the new things and all of the new developments, because they change so quickly in this career field.
For me, I think just the acknowledgement that you aren't going to know everything, and that it's okay to make mistakes, and that growth doesn't happen unless you make the mistakes. So give yourself some grace. If you don't get it right the first time, or you mess up on a test, or, you know, if I could give my younger self some advice, it would be have some grace for myself. I'm not perfect, and it's okay to make some mistakes.
I love it. And are there any like final any final advice you want to provide to some of our students?
I have a bit of advice, and I'll tell it with an anecdote. So maybe it's more of like a fable, if it were. Growing up, my parents put me in Boy Scouts. Around middle school, a lot of my friends started leaving, and it wasn't cool to be in Boy Scouts anymore. So I told them that I wanted to leave, and they said, well, you know what? We already paid your dues. Guess what? You're going to stay. Mm-hmm. The next year came around. I was like, all right, I'm ready to leave. And like, oh, sorry, we paid your dues again. You're going to have to stay. And ultimately ended up getting my Eagle Scout. And I don't say that to brag. I say that because I was fortunate enough to have a family that supported me wanting to earn this thing that they knew was really important and valuable. And I recognize that not everybody has that. And especially within our communities of color, we don't always give each other permission to be really nerdy or to get into technical disciplines, right? But we know that we all have fun passions. We like to eat ramen and watch anime, speaking for myself, for sure. And so, you know, if you have a passion around something, I would just want to make sure you know that you have permission from me, from society, from our culture broadly to pursue this career field, because there's so many benefits to it. You know, everyone's circumstances are different, but you definitely have the permission from the culture and the society to pursue this career field if you're interested in it. And don't let anyone discourage you if you're really passionate about it.
Yeah.
All right. And Angela?
So my advice would be just to be an explorer, you know, see the world, explore different careers. I guarantee what you want to do today will likely maybe not be the thing that you're doing 30 years from now. So allow yourself to see the world, allow yourself to try different careers, value yourself. And even if there's nobody in your family that's ever done this before, be the person that leads the pack. Take a chance and really love yourself, you know, like give yourself grace. So those are the things that I would give advice about.
I love it. And I want to say thank you. I'm going to ask that the two of you come back again, because I think that this conversation is so rich that it needs to take place again. And for our students who are a part of this conversation, there are resources so you can continue to research the field of cybersecurity, whether it's you want to know about the salaries, how much education is needed. Please, please, please tap into ONET resources or Road Trip Nation so you can further explore this career path. And also, Angela and Anthony they're so gracious. They want to make sure that you have their contact information. So if you want to reach out and say, hey, I was a part of that career conversation, I wanted to follow up. Or do you think that you guys can do it again? Because we will. I just want to be a part of that. Just reach out to them. You know, one thing that I have to say about our Black and Brown students is you have to take advantage of mentorship. I cannot stress that enough. If someone is willing to give you their contact information and to make time for you, then the best thing that you can do is make sure that you can stay connected. So that way, when you're creating your path, you'll have someone to help with that guidance and giving you the tools that you need to be successful. So please, please, please reach out to Anthony and Angela, and hopefully, you never know, fingers crossed, they can be mentors to you. And last, if you enjoyed this P3, again, I just want to say this, let me breathe. This was my first baby. Krista, she is like the wise one. She can do this thing, and it's like gold. But I just want to thank you for, spending this time with me. You two are the first of many. I am so excited. This is my baby. We have to get this information out to our students because they can't be something if they don't see it. And now that they have a great representation of what that looks like, I think the sky is the limit for our students. So I'm going to stop the video and say thank you again.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks, everybody. It was great talking with you.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't stop it. Okay, now I'm going to stop.